Gonna find my baby, gonna hold her
Oh,
tight, gonna
oh
grab
shit.
some afternoon delights. You're listening to the Auxiliary Gate Podcast, Kentucky's weekly horse racing discussion. And now, here are your hosts, Alan Schneider, Geoff Riggs, and me, CC Broaddus. Hello, friends. Welcome to episode number 233. I think I got that right. 233 of the Auxiliary Gate Podcast. It's Groundhog Day, February the 2nd, 2026. Wherever you are, I hope the groundhog saw his shadow. He did not hear. So that means 6 more weeks of crappy weather. That's okay. We'll try to get our way through this. I'm joined by Geoff Riggs. Geoff, Alan Schneider's not here. Apparently, I don't know what he said. Some kind of cryptic text about home repairs, or maybe he's adding on a sunroom to his house, or maybe installing a tanning bed. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, all I heard was he was having a quote unquote handyman coming over tonight, so I wasn't going to ask any questions.
Oh, I see what you're getting at. Okay,
Hmm. Yeah.
okay, right. Well, also conspicuous by her absence, Jenny Doyle is not with us. I don't know what happened to her either. I'm kind of getting a little bit. We may have to make some changes here. I'll get the axe out. I don't care. I don't care anymore. We'll get Brandon Jaggers back on this program in a heartbeat.
The people are probably clamoring for Brandon.
I think so. We get a lot of fan mail for Brandon
We
from
do.
from
Absolutely,
the
we do.
from the ladies and
Hmm.
and those that love the six horse superfecta box.
Hmm.
Anyway, did you catch the Holy Bull Stakes over the weekend?
Sure did. That was an impressive performance from Nearly.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It was probably bad for you because I know you had your eye on Cannoneer.
I did, yeah, and he tried to go toe to toe with him and didn't go so well for old Cannoneer, but I'm not totally giving up on him yet. He's young, likely race, can still improve. What'd you
Right.
think of the race?
That horse looks really impressive. Now, the thing is that they are going to skip the Fountain Youth and go straight to Florida Derby, and I think that's the right thing to do because you're going to ask a lot out of a horse after running a big race like that. That had to have been a gut-wrenching effort for the horse. That was just his third start. He's already running, speed figures that are just, Kentucky Derby, uh, Kentucky Derby victory type speed figures. He ran a 98,
Right. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's pretty strong. And but you get horses that run that fast this early in their career, bad things happen. They tend to go by the waist, by the sideline. So I'm thinking of horses like Constitution for Pletcher, Escandarea, who looked like
Yep.
he was going to be a Triple Crown winner several years
Mhm.
ago. He went by the wayside. So hopefully they can get this horse to Kentucky. But he's
Yeah,
going
it does seem like one of those performances that you can put in the back of the Rolodex and use as a horse to play against next time out, especially if they don't get ample time off. But as you said, I think the plan I think he's got more of a chance to be successful if they do give him plenty of time until his next race.
right. And honestly, if he runs a similar race in the Florida Derby, I mean, he's going to be probably the Kentucky Derby favorite.
I would think so, yeah.
But there's a lot of time between now and then. As for Cannoneer, it was really silly to make that horse. No, I would have done the same thing. It was silly to bet that horse as the favorite.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I did not have a win bet on him, I will say, as somebody who bet him in the Derby future wager. I was just watching as with interest as that goes. I did not think he should have been favored in that field.
I used him in the pick five that I lost money on, that I
Yeah.
hit and lost money. But I mean, that's one of the main rules of betting horses is never bet a horse doing the first or doing something for the first time. And that was what he was. He was trying two turns for the first time. So you really need to
As a
lay off
favorite,
horses.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
as a favorite, you don't
Right.
bet the types.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I got a feeling we haven't seen the last of him. Hopefully, at least. I'm sure they'll try him somewhere. going two turns
Yeah, I
without.
don't think they're giving up on him by any means. Yeah,
No, but plus it was a tough race. I mean, he had to
it
look
was.
nearly in the eye all the
Yeah.
way down the backstretch.
Really, he didn't. I mean, he hung on okay given how it looked coming into the stretch. I mean, I thought he was probably going to run last when they came off the turn, and he kind of, I wouldn't say he dug in, but he kept trying.
Yeah, that's yeah, I that horse has some quality. It's just a
Yeah,
matter of you still got to get his set up. You probably got to get some experience under his belt.
right.
So yeah, uh, still a nice prospect. Turfway finally going to return to action on Wednesday, or at least hopefully, after taking a
Mhm.
week off. Have you had a chance to look at anything this week?
I have not. I have not. I know PJ is in on Wednesday for Brilliant Racing, so excited about her back to the races. I think she's like 6-1 on the morning line in there. I think there's a couple tough ones. I think Brad Cox and Larry Rivelli have the two morning line favorites in there that should both be tough. I think she fits pretty well outside of those two. Have you dug into that card much?
Yeah, it looked tough. I wanted to float an angle.
Okay, I'm always down for that.
So just on Wednesday, I noticed there's a couple of Florida shippers
Hmm.
in one of the, I think it's an allowance race earlier in the card. Maybe keep an eye on Florida shippers just because they've gotten a work in down
Oh
south
yeah,
where a lot of the horses here, I mean, you just couldn't do anything there for about 3 or 4 or 5 days because there's so much ice on the ground.
at least
And,
that long. Yeah.
and there was a lot of tack walking around the
Right.
shed row for most of the barns in this area. So maybe I know there's a Trombetta horse in on Wednesday, and I haven't looked at the rest of the week. But if there's any type of horse that's shipped in, I think you might want to give them extra credit just because they might be a little bit fitter.
That's a great angle. Yeah, I 100% agree because that's real. There's nobody that is um has the training that was planned going into these turfway races this week, I guess is the best way I can put it.
Right. Now, maybe horses that have run a lot, they're
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
they're
they
not
keep their fitness. I'm not
they're,
saying that the horses aren't
yeah.
fit running. I'm just saying they probably plan to do more than they've been able to.
I don't know if I'd want a horse coming in from the thoroughbred center that's, maybe coming off a layoff or second off the layoff
Yeah.
or something like
Yeah.
that. I think that might be an issue. But the
Hmm.
horses that have 3 or 4 local starts under the belt by now probably are okay. But yeah, just keep a close eye on the shippers, especially
Yep.
the ones down south.
Makes sense.
Okay. All right, it's time for our special guest. Without further ado, I'll do the honors. Okay, our guest this evening is widely known as the creator of TimeformUS speed figures and the pace projector, tools you can find in the daily racing forum. We are extremely pleased to be joined by Craig Milkowski. Now, personally, I will add that I try to listen to every pod or YouTube video or whatever I can get my hands on that Craig is appearing on. Because, sir, I think you're probably top 1% of your craft. You just seem to talk sense into things that can be somewhat chaotic at times. So, Craig, welcome to the show, first of all.
I appreciate that. I don't know about top 1% of anything, but I'll take it. I'm not going to complain for sure.
You're flying high. We'll talk about that, the reason why, a little bit later, but you're flying high in my book. So, uh, just real quick, tell us, we talked about it before we started recording, but tell us exactly what you're doing right now. You're still doing the TimeformUS figures, correct?
Yes, there's me and my same partner that did them back when we were with DRF. We are still doing them and we work closely with them. We've just expanded what we do, doing some private stuff for some other people, for different overseas stuff, both thoroughbreds, harness racing. So that's kind of where we're at. But as far as Timeform US, nothing's changed at all. I still work pretty closely with David Aragona and the people at DRF. So we have a great relationship.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now let's do pleasure before business. I know you're a big Oklahoma City Thunder fan, so congratulations on the successful run you guys are having. Are you a season ticket holder by any chance? Or
Yes, me and my wife have been season ticket holders since they came here in 2008. I actually retired from the Air Force the summer of 2008, right around when the news broke that the Thunder were moving to Oklahoma City, and we knew we were going to be coming back here. We were in Belgium at the time, but my kids wanted to come back here. They liked it, and so we were coming back. And I said, "Hey, I'm been a huge basketball fan all my life. I played a lot of basketball." I said, let's get season tickets. So we've been one ever since. And kind of a funny story. Our youngest, who's about to turn 30, when she was maybe 14 or 15, she would go to games with us, and she said, "I'm going to work for the Thunder someday." And she actually put her mind to it, and she did it. She works in business analytics, is like director of email marketing or something.
wow,
And whatever it was during the COVID years, there was a job opening and she applied for it. There was like 300 and some people applied, and she wound up getting the job. So we're
oh,
really
that's cool.
proud of her. She's been there ever since. She got one of the championship rings sitting here. I'm actually in her house now. So
No
we're really
kidding. She
proud
got
of
a
her as
ring.
well. Yeah,
She
it's
got a.
not the same as the player rings, but it's very nice, very pretty. Pretty. It's something to see. I can say that.
Oh wow. So are you pretty excited about the season? Are you maybe a little disappointed that the team's not going to go for the record? You know the I guess it's the Warriors. They have the record now for the most wins.
I mean, I'm not personally. I always thought that was kind of a pipe dream. I just think the competition's way too tough this year. And it's just, I don't know what's going on in the NBA. I mean, it's another topic, but with all these guys getting injured, it seems like it's everybody. When I was growing up, I mean, it wasn't unusual for guys to play all 82 games, playing 40 minutes a game. And it just seems to be a rash of injuries, but maybe they'll figure it out someday because I sure can't figure it out.
Yeah. Now the good news is, well, I guess Oklahoma City's out of the Giannis sweepstakes. Seems like there's four teams kind of in the running for him. Was that ever a possibility, you think?
I don't really think so. I mean, that would kind of the thing with the Thunder is they're building, not only do they want to be successful now, they're trying to keep themselves successful for quite a while, and they have quite the trove of young players and draft picks. I mean, if they wanted to trade for Giannis, I don't think anybody could outbid them, but it would just break up the whole thing they have going right now, and I just don't think it will work here.
And then, yeah, you mentioned the draft picks. They've got like three this year. This is like the strongest draft class in many, many years. And they've got three this year, and then they got three next year, I believe. Or maybe do they have a chance at a fourth maybe this year? But regardless, man, they are you guys are set to run this thing out for a few years, hopefully.
Yeah, it's hard to even keep track of how many they have. I know they have the Clippers pick, they have the Sixers pick, they could have Utah's pick. Probably not though, because Utah's making sure they're really bad and it's protected. And there's one other one, maybe the Houston pick I think they have, which won't be
Yeah,
very good. But
yeah.
part of young teams or small market teams staying good is they have to have draft picks. You're just not going to sign free agents if you're Oklahoma City or Utah or Milwaukee. You're not going to get big names that way.
Well, enjoy it while it lasts. I'm kind of in the Cincinnati area, so my teams are the Bengals and the Reds. If that tells you anything about my life, so but
Well, I'm originally from Baltimore, so mostly I'm a Baltimore Orioles fan, and they haven't won since 1983. So I can feel you there. The Colts left, so I'm not a
right,
fan of the Ravens because I left before they came to
okay.
Baltimore. So yeah, it's been a long time. I used to be a Bullets fan, but they left Baltimore too. So that's kind of how I wound up becoming a Thunder fan, just by circumstance, and finally
Did
lucked out for once.
uh, our mutual friend Lee Butler told me that you went to high school with Larry Colmus?
Yeah, Larry's the one that got me into horse racing.
Okay,
We had lots of classes together, and him and another friend of mine, Ken Beck, they would try to get me to go to the track, and I never wanted to go, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I was playing baseball and basketball and football. Well, they finally talked me into going to Bowie one cold December day. I want to say it was 1983. And I've never stopped going since. The first day we were there, we went up to the announcer's booth, and Dick Woolley was the announcer. And, keep in mind, this is way before there were any trainer stats available. And I remember him, the first thing he ever said was, this guy, Odie Cleland, who was a trainer, he said he's really good with first time starters. And of course, I had no idea what that meant at the time. But I think I had about $4 to my name, and I bet two on this horse, and he won at 8-1. And I was hooked ever since. It was probably quite a while after that before I ever cashed another ticket, but that certainly got me hooked.
It was Bowie in Baltimore.
It's actually closer to DC, which, it's fairly close. It was probably
Yeah.
a 30-minute drive from where we were.
Okay. I don't think I'd ever seen a race at Bowie before. I've go
Yeah,
back
they
quite a
closed
ways
shortly
myself.
after.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's talk about what you do. And I've heard of way back. I heard of horse players making their own speed figures, especially in the old days. To me, that's always sounded like a lot of work. If you did it for a lot of tracks, but especially since the racing form kind of started to print the Beyer speed figures I think it was in the early '90s, maybe. But what led you to believe you could create your own set of numbers? What how did you get started in this?
So it's kind of funny. Shortly after, I spent about a year going to the track with Larry and our friend Ken. I mean, we went to Charlestown a lot because they were night racing. And, we were students at the time. So it was either weekends or night racing for us. So we did a lot of Charlestown. We did some Garden State Park back in its heyday. Well, shortly after graduating high school, I decided I was going to go into the Air Force. And I went into the Air Force and was stationed at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. And it's kind of funny looking back now. I was an air conditioning mechanic. And at the time, the heating and the air conditioning were separate. So during the winter, we didn't have a whole lot of stuff to do. We would do maintenance like changing filters and greasing motors and changing belts, but that was about it. There wasn't a whole lot of work other than, emerge places that had year round cooling and stuff. But we were way overmanned. So in the winter, your boss would give you a job in the morning, and if you told him you were done at lunchtime, he would just say, "Get lost, go find somewhere to go." I probably shouldn't be saying that. It's not how the Air Force works anymore, but back then it did. So I would just hang out at the base library because they had every handicapping horse racing book you would ever find, whether it was Tom Ainsley or Jim Quinn, James Quinn, or Andy Beyer or William Quirin. And I just read every single thing I could get my hands on. And I was going to the track when I could. There were, had Garden State Park, had Freehold, even the Meadowlands. I was a little further away from where I was stationed, but I would make trips there. Monmouth was easy drive, less than an hour. So, I mean, I just went to tons of tracks, kept reading all these books, trying to figure out what was going on, started dabbling with making my own speed figures. And one of the first things I noticed was a lot of times I just didn't agree with the speed figures. They became available around the early 90s and the Racing Times, maybe. Um, I don't remember the exact timing, but you started having access to the buyers, and I would look at mine and look at his. And I'm not going to pretend like I was always right. Of course, I wasn't, but there were many times where I would just have a vastly different opinion. And the thing was, people were betting the buyer speed figures. Nobody was betting mine. So when I was right, I would get paid. And, that kind of got me started on the figure thing. And I eventually expanded into pace figures because, as speed figures became more and more popular, the prices started getting less and less. And I started just working with pace figures and finding some value there. And I just went from there. And as you say, it was a ton of work. There was every single day I would go to the 7-Eleven and buy the $2 daily racing form just to get the charts for all the tracks in the Mid-Atlantic and the East Coast. Make speed figures. It was, kind of impossible to do all the tracks all over the country back then. But Over time, with the help of computers, I kind of taught myself how to program a computer and was able to automate a lot of the work, as I'm sure all the other speed figure makers do these days. And now it's just a matter of I get everything for every track out on a printout. It's all laid out for me, and it's just a matter of calculating a track variant or variance for the day. It's a pretty simple process. I can do a track in 5 minutes or at max 15 if it's a tough one.
For those that are kind of new to handicapping, what can you explain what a track variant is to people who don't know, like me?
Sure, yeah, no problem. I mean, that's the hardest part of the speed figure is the track variant, and what you're trying to determine is just how fast is the racetrack, and you're comparing, how fast was the track on a Tuesday versus a Friday, and you're also trying to compare how fast is Aqueduct versus Gulfstream. For example, because raw times are so you just can't compare raw times to each other. I know people try to do it, but there's so many different factors involved in a horse race that it doesn't work. And speed figures give you a way to do that. But the key is the track variant, nailing that down. And you're just basically trying to figure out how fast or slow was the track that day. We're dealing with grass, which is affected by the weather, dirt, which is definitely affected by the weather and moisture. And we don't have any accurate measurement to know the changes, but we can kind of tell by the horses that run every day and how fast they run and what we expected them to run. And, there's a lot of consistent horses out there. There's a lot that aren't so consistent, but usually we have a good enough sample that we can nail it down within a couple points.
Well, I was going to ask you, is it harder? Is it harder now to make figures because the horses don't race as much as they did 30 years ago?
I definitely think it's harder for a variety of reasons. One is exactly as you say, horses don't race as much. Two, turf racing has exploded, especially on the bigger circuits. So you have way less sample size on the dirt to make figures. And three is just all these conditioned races, the non-winners of one claimers, non-winners of two, three, even four, non-winners in 6 months. Pars are kind of impossible. It used to be pretty simple to sit down and make a par for a track. I mean, Laurel would run 5,000 claimers, 6,500, 10,000. I don't remember all the increments, but you would have 100 races in every one at every distance for a year. Now you're lucky if you have 10. So you just kind of got to go by the horses that run. Pretty much ignore the lightly raced horses and just stick to the ones that have a pretty solid backing, a pretty solid record that you can back your data off of.
Well, that leads me to my next question. So I remember a big discussion back, I think it was 2013. That's what my notes say. There was a filly named Dreaming of Julia who won the Gulfstream Park Oaks by 21 lengths. And I remember Jerry Brown at Thurgraph said that if you just took the raw numbers from that race, she would have earned the fastest speed figure of all time because, uh, like, I think the way he assumes is probably what's similar to the way you look at it. Like horses, especially stakes horses, are very consistent. They'll run the race usually most of the time.
Mm.
But the way Dreaming of Julia ran that day, like either she was the fastest horse that ever looked through a bridle that day, or like I think she beat maybe 6 or 7 horses that day. Every one of those horses ran terribly, like which is almost impossible to believe. Uh, do you take creative license when you make speed figs like that race, or for races that don't make sense? Wire to wire winners. I think that happens a lot. How do you handle a race like that?
I mean, I don't remember the specifics of that race. I remember that I did not have her near as fast as some others did. I didn't like her very much at all. But I honestly don't remember the specifics. I do take creative license at times. We try not to. We try to trust the clock as much as possible. And I think that's a safer bet now than it used to be because I don't know if you guys know, I actually work with Equibase, getting a lot of any races you see are hand timed. They used to just go in the charts and they would tell you they were hand timed, and hand times are generally not close, no matter how good the hand timer is. We time them all from video now. So very few races are inaccurate when they're timed. But years ago, that wasn't always the case. We didn't have the tools to go and time races from video and figure out what was wrong. And not just hand time races. I mean, stuff goes wrong with the teletimer all the time. And, you would get things in a chart and just say, yep, it was hand timed. And, back when I was at McGuire Air Force making speed figures, I had no idea the hand times weren't reliable. So who knows how many terrible speed figures I made because of that. Because back then I was very strict and that I would trust the clock no matter what. Now I've learned you just can't do that. I mean, there's times when I'll time a race because it just looks totally wrong. Maybe just as an example, I saw one a few weeks ago. I think it was Mahoning Valley, where every race the track variant pointed to the track being about 5 points fast. And a maiden, or not a maiden claimer, a $5,000 claiming race, the track was 25 points fast. And if I applied that 5 point variant, those would have looked like stakes horses. When I timed the race, it checked out fine. But if I use that 5 variant for that race, people are going to be making bets on horses that just don't deserve it. And so, yes, I definitely will use creative license on some figures. It will take a preponderance of the evidence, as you'll hear sometimes in other walks of life, for me to do that. And my assistant, we're very much in sync on how we do figures, but there are times where races just don't make any sense. And I've learned over the years that if you just go by the clock, you're going to make some terrible figures. And I would rather err on the side of caution than have people betting, on a horse who's 20-1 because he has a 15-point figure edge over the field, where I just know that's not realistic in a 5,000 claimer. It just doesn't happen.
You said you had your assistant, as in one assistant. You just have one assistant?
Yeah, it's just two of us that do all the time
Oh
for US.
my goodness. So so how long does it take to do an entire day of racing all over the country?
Well, lately it hadn't taken very long at all because
Well,
everybody's buried in snow.
yeah, let's
But
assume maybe a
yeah,
random Saturday in July when a bunch of tracks are
yeah,
running.
Saturday. Right. That's probably about as busy as we get, July and August on the weekend, when I mean, maybe there's 30 tracks running now. There used to be times when there was 40, but we've lost a lot of racing. We just split them down the middle, and we usually stick to the same circuit, so we're comfortable with each other. So we each get about 15. To generate the worksheets that I make, that only takes maybe 10 minutes because it's mostly computerized. But from there, I said it could take 5 minutes to 15 minutes for a track. That's about it.
Oh
It,
wow.
it doesn't really take that long anymore. All the
Even
work gets done. Yeah. Now, I mean, there's other work to do. We update constantly our data, especially for pace figures, and knowing what kind of paces to expect. And it's 6 furlongs. If the race went in 110, what should the half be? And that can change over time depending on the horse population and the class of horses that are running. But yeah, for the most part, just doing the figures maybe on a busy day could take 4 hours, something like that. Four
wow,
hours for 4 hours each for two of us.
that's unbelievable. I thought it would for sure take like
Yeah.
all day to do another day of racing. So that's pretty cool. That's interesting. So I'm going to have to give you some credit. You made my January uh by giving out a horse on. I listened to you on the Chris Larmy podcast. I think it's called Bet with the Best.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, Chris. I think that's the only one I've done until this one all year. So,
okay.
Chris
Well,
is a good friend of mine. He is one sharp guy.
I listen to his show quite frequently, and I double listen when you're on there. So I have to give you credit. Now, this conversation you had with him, you said that your figures, the Timeform US figures, are generally 20 points more than a buyer speed figures. So there was a horse in that in a allowance on the turf named McRaven that
Hmm.
had a fig that was his last fig at Laurel was 30 points higher than the buyer. And so that you said that was an eye opener. You went to a replay, watched the race. The horse had a kind of a tough trip. This horse's value. I bet him 6 to 1, singled him in a pick four. So first, thank you. First of all, is that where you start? If you're handicapping a race, do you kind of look for discrepancies like that, or do you start with replays, or what do you do personally?
I honestly don't look at buyer speed figures very often. I never look at them before I make our own figures because I just don't want to know what they did ahead of time. Uh, but I do, I do work for DRF, so I have access to Formulator and I have access to Timeform US. So if I see a horse is not taking the money that I think the horse should be taking, then I'll go look and see, well, maybe there was a disagreement here. And when I do a show like I did with Chris, I'll definitely look because I was wondering why that horse was, I think it was 8 to 1 on the morning line, something like that. And I think I said I would take as low as 4 to 1. That's how much I like that horse, if memory serves. But um, yeah, so I will look, and that's actually how I got started making my own, like really taking it serious, making my own speed figures. I mentioned those discrepancies. Um, there was a horse a long time ago. I mean, I'm talking back in the late '90s. A horse named Mossflower who had won a race at Belmont Park. And back then, I was making my figures on the buyer scale because that's all I really knew. And don't quote me on the specifics, but she was running in a stakes race. I think it might have been the Hempstead, and I saw she had like a 98 buyer speed figure, and I had given her like a 112. She had beat an allowance field by many, maybe 10 lengths, something like that. And I just thought she towered over the field. And what happened in that stakes race, she actually blew the horses away. And I think she was 9 to 2 that day. And, if she had that 110 or 112 buyer or whatever it was, she would have been 8 to 5 at the most. And that's really what I'll never forget that race because I said, okay, I'm on to something here. I kind of know a little bit what I'm doing because I just knew that horse was going to win. And it's just one of those feelings you get. And I generally, most races aren't like that. You like a horse or you don't like a horse, and sometimes you're right or sometimes you're wrong. But at least in my case, when I just have to bet a horse, I just have a way higher success rate. And that was the one that really started it was Mossflower. You can probably still look her up in Equibase. I don't know how far the charts go back, but she's the one that really started me on the journey that got me to where I am.
I'm glad you went on that journey because otherwise I'd probably had a bad month. But uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna turn things over to Jeff Riggs. I got several more questions I want to ask, but Jeff, take it
Yeah,
away.
I'll get a few in and I'll kick it back over to you, CC. But yeah, Craig, thanks for joining us tonight, man. It's awesome to talk to you and kind of pick your brain on this stuff a little bit. I guess the first thing was listening to you guys talk. You mentioned how you started out just doing this by hand, right? And I mean, I'm
Yep.
sure you said it takes, sometimes 5 to 15 minutes for a track now. How long did it take you to do just like one track's figures when you started off just doing this by hand?
Oh, I mean, it took a long time. I mean, I know back then all I did was pars and I was, so I wasn't looking like now. Every race we're looking at the top 8 finishers, trying to projecting off them and their last 4 races. So for any race, we could have as many as 32 data points
Mm.
to try to nail down a variant just for that one race. And then we combine all the races. Back then, I mean, I didn't have that kind of data and I was just using par figures, but it would still take a while. I would clip out all the charts from the DRF, do the math by hand. I had the buyer speed charts in front of me and just would look at those. And I want to say when I was stationed at McGuire, I would do like all the New Jersey tracks. I would do the New York tracks. I would do the Maryland tracks and Philly Park at the time. And I think that was about it. And even that would probably take me 4 or 5 hours a day. I was that weird guy that after work, I would say like, yeah, I'll go out to the bar, but I got to finish these figures first. And
We understand that labor loving. Yeah,
yeah,
I can imagine that just had to have
yeah.
taken forever.
It
That's
did. It
crazy.
did for sure. And I mean, I had quite a group that would go to the track with me. There's actually a guy I met at Saratoga. I want to say it was, I can't remember if it was this, I think it was 2 years ago that I was stationed with at McGuire who sought me out on Twitter, and I went and met with them. And I was like, what are you doing here? Why are you coming to the races? He says, well, he says, I've been going ever since. He is a guy that got out of the Air Force after 4 years, and I lost track of him. And,
Well,
here it
that's
was.
awesome.
Yeah, 25 years later, I run into the guy and he's there with his daughter, going to Saratoga and hanging out. So it was really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, creating racing fans. That's what we need, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, eventually, as you said, you did end up going the computer route, programming, made it much faster, more efficient. Do you have a programming background at all, or was that just something that you learned for this journey specifically?
So way back, this kind of ties back to the Larry Colmus story. What kind of helped him get me to go to the track for the first time was, I was taking computer science classes at Mount St. Joseph High School in Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
and he was calling races in the cafeteria off the charts in the computer, and he got talking to me, and I was pretty good with, we're talking basic programming language back in 1983 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually wrote a program to race horses across the screen on the old uh, green and black printers, and got it to work pretty well. We gave odds and jockeys and had these things racing across. And the computer science classroom was right across from the computer lab, which was maybe the size of two closets. And after about a week, we must have had 30 people in this watching races and screaming and yelling. And as you might imagine, that didn't go over very well in a Catholic school.
Oh yeah, I'm sure not. I'm sure not. But man,
Yeah. But
I
the
was thinking,
brother who,
we just played Oregon Trail back then. That sounds a lot more exciting to me.
the brother who was the teacher came storming out one day, threw us all out, and told me I was never to step foot in the computer room again after he found out that I was the one who wrote all this. And he said, you get an A for the class, you never have to come back, because I was doing stuff way advanced of what they were teaching. And but I kind of forgot about it after I graduated high school. And
Sure,
then later on in the 90, I started making my own figures I started using a calculator and get more sophisticated. One of the old Texas Instruments programmable calculators.
sure, yeah.
And my youngest brother said to me, what are you doing? He says, you could program, just get on Google and learn how to do it and save yourself some time. He kind of made fun of me. He said, this is ridiculous what you're doing. And it kind of turned me into learning programming again. And so I started just writing code as a hobby, trying to make everything that I did. And it kind of leads me to another horse in War Emblem, who back when
Yeah.
I started making my own figures again, but by this time I had it all programmed, and I would download files from DRF or Briss. It didn't matter. It would work with either one, but it would take my figures and put them in place. And I had a nice, pretty printout with colors, which kind of led,
Nice.
you guys are all the colors you see in PPs derived from me doing that on my program. I started a website,
Interesting.
pacefigures.com. But that all started because of my brother. And then I posted on, there's a message board. I think it's really the only successful horse racing message board still around, paceadvantage.com. I
Hmm.
started posting about War Emblem before he ran in the Illinois Derby. And he was another one of those. I just knew he was going to win, and I kept talking about him. And he won the Illinois Derby in a romp. I think he paid $11 or something like that. So all these people started asking me about my program. And then I did the figures, and I said, well, I think he's going to win the Derby. and and everyone's like, yeah, he's not going to win the Derby. And sure enough, he wins the Derby. And from there, I started getting people asking me, hey, we'd like to buy what you're doing. I mean, I never had any intention of doing this for a living. Um, but I was
Yeah,
like,
this
well,
was
you
a
know, why not?
handicapping tool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was just a printout with my figures in place of the other figures, but it added colors and I kind of graphed the figures like Thorograph. I still kind
Yeah.
of like that idea where you can see patterns that way because I'm a big pattern guy when I'm handicapping. And it just kind of took off from there. And I was still in the Air Force at the time. So it was really a lot of work. I kind of had to limit the number of people I was selling to because I was programmer, web designer, customer service, you name it. Uh,
Wow.
and then
Yeah,
when
all while
I mean, there
still
were times
working
I
too.
was
Yeah.
actually doing this from Saudi Arabia. I was doing it from Afghanistan. Luckily, I was in communications by then. I had changed jobs from my old air conditioning days, so I had access to
Wow.
be able to get the data and stuff. So on my downtime when I was in those places, that's all I would do is keep up on the figures. My wife, who of 33 years now, she would run to the local newsstand here and get me DRFs and simulcast weekly every week and mail them over to wherever I was. And it was quite the adventure. But I finally retired, and thanks to Pace Advantage and just word of mouth, people really liked what I did. It eventually led Mark Attenberg, who was starting Timeform US. He reached
Hmm.
out to me and said, "Hey, we want you to be our figure maker. Are you interested?" And I said, "Well, given the situation I was in where I was a one-man shop, it sounded very good to me." So I did it,
Right. Yeah.
and yeah, I have no regrets ever since.
Man, yeah, that's awesome. Well, talking about, Timeform US and current day and what you all do now, you all make different figures, speed figures, pace figures and stuff, but it seems like the pace figures, that pace projector, they're kind of the star of the show. What is it about pace figures in particular that you guys do that you think makes it so valuable to the handicapper? Because I think it is too, personally.
I Okay, I don't want to. I've already made. I don't want to knock on other people, but there's been some other attempts to make pace figures
Hmm.
that were available for public consumption. I'm sure there's probably people who do them privately who do fine, but had those been any good, I would have used them, and I never would have went down that route. But
Hmm.
they weren't. I mean, in use, they just didn't turn out good. And like I said, I just read everything I could get my hands on and kind of devised my own system. And frankly, I think it works. I do some things differently from what was taught in all the books. And I just think they're the most accurate ones out there. And doing pace figures, that's the hard part is getting them accurate because all the tracks are just so different. They all use very different
Right.
run ups. The geometry of the racetracks is different. Where the points of call come, how much of a turn is involved in the different fractions. All of that stuff matters, and I still won't say the pace figures are perfectly accurate because that's impossible, but they're about as
Sure.
good as you can possibly get. And I just really think that helps. I mean, even though the game has changed a lot, speed is still the most important thing in racing. And that even goes for turf. I love betting turf. I know you mentioned McRaven. I think they're the best betting opportunities now because people don't really understand them like they do dirt racing. The fields are bigger, but pace is even more of a factor on the turf than it is on dirt, in my opinion, because it just can really alter the final times and can throw people off. So I just try to be as accurate as I can. And on turf, you have to deal with different rail settings. Like you can't just take your data and say, okay, what's the average half mile at a mile and a 16th on the aqueduct turf? Because they have two courses, they have countless rail settings. You got to have all that data and really crunch it down. And I
Right.
just think we do a really good job of that, much better than what was out there previously.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great tool that I definitely use. And, my personal handicapping pace and watching replays are kind of my two go-to angles for sure. And I guess that kind of leads me into replays in general. You already talked about how, it can be really difficult to quantify into a single figure a lot of these things. I know you talked about how you like to watch replays. Does that go in? do trips and replay watching go into these figures at all, or is that something that is just too difficult to quantify at this point in a single figure?
They don't go into the figures. Now, I mean, any show I've done, any podcast, I'll talk about trips and how I think it affected the figure. And my ultimate dream someday is that it could all go into one figure if we had the data available, particularly ground lost, ground
Right.
traveled, I should
Yeah, how to
say.
measure it.
And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and we're making strides there, but it's still not easily available. Like you can't just
Right.
go to DRF or to BRIS and have that as part of the data files. And even more important, like I know Thorograph uses ground loss, and I think that's great. But I also think it's even more important is when the ground was lost. Um,
Yeah.
I like to equate it I do a lot of more walking than running now, but I used to do a lot of running. If I was going to go race somebody or just one lap around a quarter-mile track and we had a agreement to just walk the first half and run the second half, well, if I stayed on the outside and they stayed on the inside, I could easily keep up walking, even though I'm traveling a lot more ground and it's not really going to cost me any extra energy. But as soon as
Right.
we start running, I'm going to get destroyed because I'm running way further. So to me, that's where I like to use pace figures in regard to the trips. And if a horse was wide, when were they wide and did it matter? And my dream is that someday that information will be available in the past performances or in the data files and it can be built into the figures. But until that time comes, and it's probably better as a better, TTOR that it's not because once it's
Right.
able to be quantified, then it's just going to probably make it less valuable. But as a figure maker and somebody who strives to make the numbers the best I possibly can, that would be the dream. As a better, not so much. I'll keep it the way it is, where I can go watch races that other people aren't watching, and hopefully have a little better understanding of them than the people I'm betting against. Because at the end of the day, that's what racing's all about, as far as betting horses.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's got to be kind of, double-edged sword for you for sure, because that is one of the last frontiers with all the information that is out there right now, I think is, putting in that time to watch replays. But yeah, maybe that'll be the next pie in the sky thing down the road at some point. But before I turn you back over to CC, just as a horse player, I know you're still an avid horse player. What kind of races and wagers do you target? Are you win better? Do you do pick fives? What do you like to do?
So I mostly stick to win exactas and some trifectas. And
Okay.
just this year, I talked about it on Chris's podcast. I've taken up more daily doubles. I've just learned, even though I had some good success with David Aragona doing pick fives, it's just not really my thing. It's not what I like. Uh, I'm a guy who every race I'm looking to beat the favorite. And if I think the favorite's going to win 9 times out of 10, I just don't play.
Yeah.
Unless it's sometimes there'll be a horse I think should be 4 to 5 and they're 5 to 2. Maybe I'll play, but usually not because normally I was wrong about my opinion in those cases, probably. So
Right.
I like to stick to one race at a time, and at the most, the doubles, I don't mind doing two. But I'm just so anti-favorite when I try to hit pick fours or pick fives. I invariably lose because I left out some 3 to 1 shot that I didn't think offered value. But I probably should have used him because overall, even though he might have been negative value for that one race, when you combine him with other opinions, it could have been good. But it's just not for me. So when I do play pick fours and pick fives, I will stick to 50, $60 max tickets and go for a big score. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's worked out okay. But it's just still not something I really enjoy. I really like to dive into a race. I'm either right or I'm wrong. I turn the page and start over again. But that's
Yeah.
just how I am as a person. I think that's kind of important to figure out your tolerance. If you play pick fours and pick fives, you're going to have some long, long losing streaks. Uh,
Exactly.
and I have no problem admitting that I'm not cut out for that. It
Yeah.
would not work for me. Go to play tennis that night and hit all the balls long because I'd be so frustrated because I've lost 35 pick fours in a row or something. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that takes discipline to do that too. Identify your strengths and stick to them as well. But it does sound like that's what you enjoy the most too. So I'm sure that helps with that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. All right. I know CC has a couple more questions for you, so I'll let him wrap things up here.
I've got more.
Okay.
I've got like 1,000 and a couple questions. No, I'm kidding. Just to piggyback on what Jeff asked you, on average, how many wagers do you make on a weekend? Like, are you really super selective now, or do you, are you willing to fire away? If you feel the need.
I'm pretty, and this kind of goes to what I was saying about pick fours and pick fives. It's so rare that there's a sequence that includes all races that I like, because pretty much these days I'm sticking to stakes races, allowance races, and occasionally maiden special weights, and that's about it. I've written off claimers, and it's nothing against. I mean, I watch them and I make figures off of them, and I certainly appreciate claiming horses, but it's just for me, I don't enjoy betting on them anymore because it's too much about humans, in my opinion. And I love horse racing because of the horses. I don't care about reading the horses PPs, and they've had been claimed 6 times in the last 8 races, and they won for 20 and now they're in for 10, or it just that's not the kind of handicapping I enjoy. So mostly I stick to the better class races, not trying to be a snob, but it's just what I do the best at. And I think it's just a personal preference where if I don't enjoy handicapping a race, I'm usually not going to do very well at it. And I learned that over time. I kept records for a long time. I can't even remember the software that I used to have, but it's consistently pointed that claiming races and starter allowances and things like that, I just had a terrible ROI. So I've pretty much just written them off.
That's great philosophy, I think. On Saturday, a horse named Nearly, a son of Not This Time for Todd Pletcher won the Holy Bull. Just
Mm-hmm.
curious your thoughts on that effort. I know he got a 98 buyer speed figure for that effort. What did you think?
Now my assistant does Gulfstream, but I know Andy Serling made a post about the horse and he tagged me in it. So I kind of took a peek at the worksheet. And my guess is he ran about a 117-ish or so. He had run a 112 on Timeform US. I think he was a horse who had one of those bigger than usual 20-point gaps. At least if I was reading between the lines right from what Andy wrote. I know he was the top pick in Timeform US. So he was bet, but I think he was second choice. And he had a pretty decent figure edge over the horse who was the favorite. Won pretty easy. I mean, watching the race, he looked very good to me. I've read a little bit that maybe the rail wasn't the place to be at Gulfstream, but I haven't taken the time yet to go back and do my own analysis of that because I very rarely trust social media bias talk. I want to see it for myself. So I don't know if you guys saw that yet or not, but he certainly looked good to me. Not this time would give me a little pause for just how far he can actually go, but his running style sure looked like he could run a little bit further. The pace was really fast that day. Um, I mentioned I think he'll get about a 117, but I think 6 points of that was due to the pace. Like his final time figure would be 111, which would put us pretty close in line with the buyer speed figure.
Okay, unpack that for me. Just that went over my head. So you said 6 points was due to the pace. What could you explain that for a dummy like me?
Yeah, yeah. So the Timeform US speed figures are a combination of pace and final time, whereas buyer speed figures are just final time. When you look in Timeform US, you get both. You actually, if you look under where the horse finished, like it'll say nearly first by, I forget it, would he win by 2 lengths or something? Right under that'll be a number and it'll say something like 111. But then the big box that we put in color, the one that's really highlighted, is going to say 117 or so. And that is because the pace was so fast and he was close up to it that we actually give him extra credit over his final time figure for his overall number.
Okay. How does that stack up to maybe previous Derby winners like Sovereignty or like a Mage or something like that? Is that kind of in line with what they did?
For this time of year, I think that's even a little bit better. Of course, these are 3 year olds, and we're talking early February. By the time May comes around, they could be 10 points faster than what they are now. Your typical Derby winner probably runs in the low to mid 120s, like 125, 126 being the best I remember. Maybe Justify ran a 127. I'd have to look them all up now, but for horses to run 117 this soon is, I would say, a little bit above average. So it was impressive performance. Now, like I said, I'd be a little concerned as distances got longer. You don't want your horses
Right.
going that fast early on and hanging on. And visually, he wasn't hanging on, but figure wise, his numbers were decreasing. So he was definitely regressing that way. I hesitate to say slowing down because on dirt they're almost always slowing down, even when they're running strongly at the end. Like even Sovereignty probably slows down towards the end of his races, but this horse was noticeably slowing on the speed figure scale. So I'd be a little concerned as he went longer and longer, but they're also, he's a young, lately raced horse, and he could just as easily mature and run a more efficient race next time out.
Are there any horses or any other horses on the Triple Crown Trail that maybe we should keep an eye on from your point of view, or have you even gotten to that point yet?
No, I hate to be that guy, but people ask me every year, who's your Derby pick? And I tell them, ask me on, May the 2nd or whatever the day before the Derby is, because I just try not to get too caught up in the hype of the horses and handicap it just like every other race. Um, I'm as excited as anybody else for the preps and I watch them, but I don't try to compare the horses till I know who's actually going to show up and what the field's going to look like. And the pace projector plays a big part in that as well. So I don't get too far ahead. I'm just more looking at, okay, he won the Holy Bull. Is he going to show up in the Fountain of Youth, or is he going to go to the Florida Derby? And I'll worry about what he looks like and who he's in against when he's in the PPs again.
Okay. All right, last question. Mainly this is selfishly for me, but I freely admit I'm still a Timeform US newbie. But now that I've gotten access to DRF Formulator, I'm starting to pay attention more. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been playing horses since I was in my teen years, and that's been back in the 80s. But I'm like I said, I guess you can try to teach an old dog new tricks. What is a few things that you might suggest to somebody like me that's new at your figures? What that can help me be a better horse player?
So if I had to give a couple tips, the first thing, there's some settings on Timeform US where you can look at either the pace figures of the leader and winner or the pace figures of the horse and the winner. I always set that to the race because I want to see the shape of the race. I think that's the most important part of the Timeform US is it tells you what kind of, it's like an in race bias. If you see the figures are descending, if it was 100, then 90, then 80, then 70, you'll know that's a race that should have set up for closers. And if it didn't, maybe the front runners that hung on were pretty good, or the closers that, got up for third, beating a length really aren't very good. So I'm a big race shape guy. And then just one thing I really stress to people is the last race figure is what sticks out a lot of people and what they're betting. But I mentioned earlier, I'm more of a pattern guy. I'm looking for horses that are improving because I think the average winner in a race, and I'll say buyer figures, the scales are, even though our scales are different, the number of points are pretty similar between Timeform US and buyer. The average buyer or Timeform US improves like 8 points to 10 points from their last figure for the winner. So if you're just basing it on the speed figure they ran last time, you're going to miss a lot of horses. I'm really looking for horses that are going to improve off that last number. There's a lot of reason with younger horses, they're just getting better. Maybe they've only raced a couple times and, they ran a 90 last time, but they had a tough trip. That horse might run 100 this time because it's 2 months later. They matured. They're going to get a clean trip. So that horse that has a 98 who's 4 to 5 and got it with a perfect wire to wire trip is very vulnerable against those kind of horses. And it's not just trips. It can be things like layoffs, know the trainer, horses who are coming off layoffs. A lot of them aren't going to be cranked up the first time out or even the second time out. So if I see a horse who I know is capable of a 100 speed figure, he comes back from a layoff for a guy who doesn't try to win right off the bench, and he only runs an 85, and then the second time he runs a 91. That third time out, I'm going to fully expect him to run 100, assuming there wasn't some big drop in class or something like that. And those are the kind of horses that are going to pay prices. If you're just betting the top speed figure from the last race, you'll probably cash a lot of tickets, but you're probably going to lose a lot of money. So look for those horses that are improving, and speed figures can tell you that. You just have to be able to look a little deeper than just the number itself. Maybe watch a race, maybe, and just look at the pattern. And that's how I do things. That's what I've always talked about when I did the DRF podcast. And anytime I handicap, I kind of read from the bottom up to see how a horse is progressing instead of from the top down.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I mean, I got to admit, you got a fantastic product, but you're a brilliant communicator too. So I will give you props all day long for that. Now, Craig, I got to make you promise. You got to start doing more podcasts. So can you make that promise to me in 2026? So just do it for
Yeah,
me.
you got to get people to ask me. I almost never say no. But I
Or
haven't got
do
asked very much since I left DRF, but
or
I'm happy to do them if people will have me.
well, you heard that. So everybody needs to reach out because people like me need this on a regular. So, but Craig Milkowski, we greatly appreciate your time. Like I said, you're one of the best, and I've greatly enjoyed this conversation. So, good luck to you going forward, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. You guys were great. I appreciate you, CC, and you, Geoff. It was wonderful time. I'm glad the Butlers were able to get the two of us together. And you have my number now. It doesn't have to be a podcast. Reach out anytime, man. I love to talk horse racing.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, guys.
All right, so I had about 15 more questions I wanted to ask him. I just feel bad taking his time. I mean, he's amazing. It's like we need more people like him. This just willing to take the time and talk about things, and they're out there. We just got to find them. Just I feel bad. This is just me personally, my personal philosophy. I hate to tug on Superman's cape, but that's gosh, I would listen to him on a nightly basis.
Yeah, no, I thought you nailed it when you talked about how, he obviously is he's on the frontier and the front lines of putting all this stuff together. And he's obviously a very smart individual, but also having that ability to communicate what he is talking about and make it make sense to people like us. That's a skill on its own that not many people who are smart enough to put those kind of things together have. So I thought that was very impressive about Craig. And man, I just love to hang out with him at the track for a day. I think we need to plan an outing to Churchill or Keeneland or something. Just hang out with him for a day, pick
Maybe
his brain all day long.
he's from Oklahoma City, so we'd have to travel to Remington, I
We
guess.
can fly him in. We got that in the budget, right?
We do not. No, we do not. All we have the budget for it is a tank of gas. Maybe one
We
tank.
we can send Brandon Jaggers to go pick him up,
Jaggers could do it on his dime.
bring him back. That's what we'll do. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
I think we figured it out.
All right. Hey, a callback to a podcast we did earlier with Humberto Gomez, who was exercise rider for Bob Baffert.
hmm
Potente was a horse that he touted on our show, and the horse won Saturday, broke his maiden. Really good effort. He beat another horse that was well meant. I think it was for Mark Glatt on the outside, but that was a nice effort for the son of Into Mischief. So, horse to keep on your radar is Potente. And then another one he mentioned, Plutarch, makes his stakes debut in the Bob Lewis Stakes on Saturday. So, Florent Giroux is going to ride that horse. And I think he shipped his tack permanently to California. So
Yes, sir.
he'll take that mount, and he's got a little bit of a history with Baffert. Um, Big racing on Friday, the Southwest Stakes at Oaklawn, featuring Butane, Liberty National,
Yep.
Decode, Strategic Risk, a bunch of others. Baffert's scratching litmus test from that race, I do believe.
Saw
So
that. Yeah. Hmm.
Butane probably is going to take a lot of beating. That horse, speaking of patterns that Craig Milkowski spoke of, I think Butane's coming in on a good pattern. I think he'll
Hmm.
be tough to beat. So,
Yep. And it
and the
seems that
Wither,
the weather delay assisted him, right? Because he was having travel issues, and now he's there and ready to go.
is he there already, or is he flying in? I don't know how they do it anymore, but
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's there now or not, but at least it gives him a chance to get there.
and then the Withers at Aqueduct is also on Friday. This could be the most important Friday of Derby preps ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I looked at I got to be honest, I didn't recognize one horse in the race. So
I
that
haven't looked at it either, so I'm no help there, but I'm
I'm
sure
so
I'll watch it at least.
speaking of the daily racing form, I'm so old. I remember the racing form not having buyer speed figures in them. Yeah, you probably don't know.
I know I didn't say anything, but man, if we had video and audio, it would have been a funny face.
That was that back in those days they had a mark next to each horse's name if the horse was a mutter. Like I think it was an X with a yeah, it was a circle with an X in it. Like I mean
Nice.
every race, like five or six horses would have a circle with an X. It was a whole different ballgame. Then it was a lot more articles back then too. You know,
Right, right.
some people read Playboy for the articles. I read Daily Racing Form for the articles.
Yep. Different things
Anything
get
else?
different people going.
Right. Anything else you want to say?
Not really. I'm just hoping that the this next round of potential snow or whatever isn't anything like the last one. I don't think it's supposed to be, but I'm just hoping that we can have a normal week, get back to racing, you know, have things back to normal again. I'd be happy with.
Let me give you a forecast.
Okay, hit me.
So 31 degrees on Wednesday, 29 on Thursday, 40 degrees on Friday, 34 degrees Saturday, and check this out. Next Tuesday and Wednesday, 53, 59 degrees next Wednesday.
Wow.
I'm going to break out my Speedo.
There you go. Do a little Borat
I don't
recreation out there.
Yeah, I don't even care. I don't care who sees it. I'm gonna wear my
Hey.
Speedo because it's gonna feel like a heat wave here in Kentucky.
Oh my God, yeah. I'll be out in shorts and a t-shirt for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, that's it. Thanks to our special guest, Craig Milkowski. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll say so long for now. So on behalf of Jeff Riggs, Alan Schneider, Jenny Doyle, Brandon Jaggers, and a host of thousands all over the world, in the words of our fearless spiritual leader, Jerry Romans, we're not happy until you're not happy. Good night.